midday today, universities in England will be forced to limit the number of students they recruit onto courses deemed as underperforming as part of government plans that have been announced today. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has said he wants to crack down on what he is calling rip-off degrees that don't lead to graduate jobs.
They're being taken advantage of with low-quality courses that don't lead to a job that makes it worth it, leaves them financially worse off. That's what we're clamping down on today. But at the same time, making sure that young people have a range of fantastic alternative opportunities, whether that be apprentices or higher technical qualifications, for example. So the key message is you don't have to go to university to succeed in life. There are a range of fantastic options, and that's what we're delivering.
Labour have said the move would put up fresh barriers to opportunity in areas with fewer graduate jobs. Well, joining me now is the author and broadcaster Nels Abbey. Nels, great to have you back on BBC Radio London. I've got to start off by asking, did you go to university then?
I did go to university, absolutely.
And was it worth it all? Is it worth getting that degree certificate at the end?
Yeah, it's worth every single penny. It's worth every single penny because, again, I think the fundamental thing that I don't think there's a misunderstanding here. I think what we're seeing here is actually classism to a certain degree. There's long been a classism, and a branch of classism I call know your place-ism. There's long been this distaste and disquiet with the numbers of working class people who have taken up going to university in particular. In the past, university was always seen as the rite of passage for people who are privately educated or the children of the well-to-do and so on and so forth. Now we've got a good portion of the population going to university. And that's a good thing because university doesn't just prepare you for a job, it prepares you for the world. It prepares you for leadership. It prepares you, it gives you social capital, political capital, and understanding of how the world actually works. It puts you in a micro society that you can actually then replicate on the macro society that is the real world. There's so much more to university than just will I get a job at say, a big four accountancy firm at the end, which is it's daft, it's ridiculous, a notion. But I must emphasize this multiple times, and if there's any working class parent listening to me right now, know that this is an attack on your children's aspirations. Don't fall for it.
But you say this, but I've had so many responses today. I mean, let me give you some emails, messages that have come through, okay, just to kind of respond to what you're saying around the value of degree. TC in Walthamstow said once she graduated, she spent 8 years working in government, during which there was no use of her degree, then spent 9 years working in industry, during which she relied more on what she'd learned in government than the degree. The only element really was the degree was a huge amount. It wasn't a huge amount of use in her job in government, but she wouldn't have got the job if she hadn't had the degree. So it's almost like a tick box exercise.
It speaks for itself. So you have three things that you tend to look at in terms of what makes you competitive on the job market: experience, exposure, and education. Education will more likely than anything else get you through the door. Experience will get you up the ladder or so, and exposure and experience combined will get you to the top of the ladder, get you to the highest platforms going. But I think it's important that we recognize this, that, again, there's so many different things, because it's not just about a job. It's also about connections to the people that you'll get to meet that you probably may not have got the opportunity to meet otherwise. It's also a particular social level to a certain degree too. So there's many, many different things. Also, and it's not always about a job. It's sometimes just about developing the concept of idea of actually how to develop businesses or opportunities or meet with people. Take, for example, the first day I got to my university, one of the first people I met was a comedian called Eddie Caddy. And Eddie Caddy immediately, I think Eddie studied computer science, I studied economics. Eddie's a famous comedian now. He doesn't use his degree.
Know Eddie very well.
But everything he actually does, but Eddie knew from the beginning, and what Eddie was doing when he was at university was building connections, getting to know people, assembling his team, learning how things actually work, learning how the world actually works, and took that to another level. I went and became a banker, but now I'm also in this media business myself too. But everything I learned at university in economics and business and everything else really and truly did help me. There's people I know who are fund managers, which is possibly the highest level of professionalism in the City of London, and they studied Latin at university. So it doesn't. So the idea that there's some. I personally don't see much value in a Latin course, but somebody did, and Right now, that person's managing billions and billions of pounds for our pensions. And so I think that the idea that what's happening here, it's a silly idea that isn't, and even also to the idea in which they're pushing people to go do these apprenticeships and everything else. My child wouldn't do that. I'm a Nigerian man or so. My mum, I knew by the time I was 5 or 6 years old, I knew I'd go to university. My daughter's 9. She knew 4, 5, 6 years ago she's going to go to university. Her children are going to do the same thing. This is aimed at a particular type of people who university might not be part of their culture also, and they just want to steer them into different directions. But
I've got to give you the other angle for a minute, Nels. Please. What about those people who say, well, I'm doing an apprenticeship which will end with a degree at the end of it? Actually going via the route of an apprenticeship means I earn and I learn and I work.
You'll be, yeah, no, that's for you. I don't condemn it. It might not be, I'm not saying universities, but everybody, but I'm saying that this action also is targeted to actually reduce the number of people who do go to university, and it's rooted very firmly in classism. But I would also say this too, that look, the reality of the matter is that if you do an apprenticeship versus somebody who does a degree, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you'll always be second fiddle to the person who does a degree. How many prime ministers do we know that we had in British history that did apprenticeships?
Well,
how many people in the cabinet? How many people in the cabinet did apprenticeships? How many of the children of the people in the cabinet are doing
most
apprenticeships? Most
people would say that's the whole point. They don't want to be the Prime Minister of this country. They don't want to be a politician. They just want to get an apprenticeship in the career that they, for example, a prime example, we're here on BBC Radio London. The BBC has an array of different apprenticeships, those which allow you to then, at the end of it, perhaps either complete a course or go on to complete a degree. So what does that mean? You're still working at the BBC, even if it's on apprenticeship?
Yeah, the guy at the head of the BBC is a Cambridge-educated young man, working class man from Croydon. I know the guy, friend of mine, Tim Daly. But not friend of mine. I used to work in his chain of command. Good guy, brilliant guy. Practically everybody you see around the head table of the BBC, because it's not just about getting the lower ranked jobs, it's getting to the top. And what we're seeing increasingly is that the people who are traditionally meant to be the burden bearers, the T-boys or so, to be the water carriers for Britain or so, are now becoming more competitive. They're actually taking on the privately educated, so they're now making it to the top. And increasingly what we're seeing with the Conservative Party, particularly Rishi Sunak, are people who are protecting their class interests or so, who don't want their children to compete on and I mean, the one thing that everybody wants in life, well, most people want in life when you reach the level that Sunak's level is a concept known as an unfair advantage. And that's what you buy when you go to private school, and that's what you're trying to get when you go to any institution that gives you that little bit of makes you a little bit more competitive.
So let's break this down in terms, if I can come in on that, Nels, because it's interesting points you're making there, but I need to dissect some of it. If we focus on the plans that have been announced today to limit students on underperforming courses, surely this is good news, because if it's an underperforming course, you don't want that many students on it.
But what is an underperforming course? And there's a reason why they haven't been able to name any of them. They haven't been able to name any of them. What is actually... So if I asked you in response to that, actually, what is an underperforming course?
One of the caveats here is whether or not having the degree means that you can then go on to get a graduate job or able to get a professional job, which what they're saying, the government is saying, with a lot of these, quote, rip-off degrees, as Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said, they are underperforming because students who graduate do not get graduate jobs or professional jobs.
For every graduate job or so that there is in the public, or that there is pretty much, or so, whether it's in banking or anywhere else or so, there's. I remember when I was at PwC starting my career, for every graduate job, then there was hundreds of applicants. So not everybody's going to get a graduate job. I never got onto a graduate scheme. Some people actually have to turn around. But I never got onto a graduate scheme, but I also would not got into the organisation if I was not university educated. And that is the reality of Britain also. This has always been. So if you come from, say, a background like mine, a Nigerian, a Ghanaian, or like yours, and I believe yours is an Indian background, Shay, right? We all know deep down that this is us. This is the success that, say, Nigerians or Ghanaians or Indian people or any other community enjoyed within Britain or so. It's as a result of their children going to university. Rishi Sunak wouldn't be where he is right now if he didn't go to uni. Even if he went to the private school and everything else, he wouldn't be where he is if he didn't. And I think that's the key thing that we're dealing with over here right now, that the aspiration, the desire, the dreams, the hopes and dreams particularly for working class people. I'll take one slight step back. One of the most lovely little boys I knew, I think the element it really depicted the idea of class in Britain to me. I knew this really, really young boy. He was about 8 years old at the time, and I was at university. And he asked me what university was like, and I was really just selling it to him and telling him everything else or so. And then his mum, who was a deeply working class woman, just interjected and shouted out, "But what they don't tell you is the amount of debt they take on to get there or so, and that other sort of stuff." And it dawned on me right there and then. You could see this little boy who I think was an amazing, talented young boy. You could see the money woes were already playing a factor on his mind at 8 years old.
So if the money woes were playing, but if that was limiting his start, as you say, what about the individuals who say, well, hold on, there are apprenticeships at BBC, apprenticeships at Google, apprenticeships at Amazon. These are all forward-thinking corporations which are enabling me, a working class person from a lower income earning family, to get my foot in the door, get an apprenticeship, earn and learn. There's nothing wrong with that.
And most apprenticeships I actually saw at the BBC were taken up by graduates themselves too.
Okay,
Same thing at Google too.
But there are, for those that have got degrees, there are also those that do not have degrees who take up these apprenticeships, is the point I'm trying to make.
No, but the key thing is this, is that even on the apprenticeship schemes when it comes to Google or anywhere else, so Google or a BBC or these other highly sought after organizations, they'll still be looking for your degree will still give you a competitive advantage.
So you tweeted today, and just to elaborate on this point you're making around looking at your competitive degree, you tweeted today, know your placism. What did you mean by that within this context of having a degree or not having a degree?
Because it's a branch of classism. I call it know your placism, or any of it, just like knowing your place. That the feeling has long been in Britain that a certain type of person, a certain type of personality in the past, that would have been almost like the John Prescott figure, where John Prescott rose to become deputy prime minister of this country. He was always taught and sniggered and looked down upon as if that was not where you belonged. You're a working class man or so. The idea of you owning 2 Jaguars and all that sort of stuff and become a deputy prime minister, that is not your portion in life. That is not what you should be doing. You're not in this club or something. You're not in this club. You don't belong in that category, in that bracket or so. And to a certain degree, you saw it with, I know many people are critical of, say, Jeremy Corbyn, but Jeremy Corbyn wasn't university educated. Are you with me? And you saw the similar situation in which people looked down upon him because he didn't go through the system and everything else. So he became a situation where he or that ilk didn't know their place. And I think it's very, very much for working class people, very far and wide, that they are not knowing their places. They're now rising above their stations and they're becoming more competitive in the society. And this move that's taking place right here is a move that will turn around and actually dissuade predominantly working class people, and dare I say working class people from sinker states, often usually dare I say white working class people, because if you're a Nigerian working class man like I was or so, it is hammered into you from a very young age that you are going to university. And that's why when we see things like this is part of the problem, and I wish the people who often weaponize working class white people would speak up now, because it's in these sorts of moments that we need their voices in particular, because we already know that it's young white boys or so who are not going to university who are excelling the least academically, whereas on the African Caribbean side of things, they are progressing to university. And the reason why is because you're told from a young age that no matter how much it costs, take the cost, take the hit, and keep going. It improves your prospects.
When you say that, though, just finally, Nels, are you therefore saying for those working class individuals who go down the route and option of apprenticeship rather than university are making long-term mistakes, or do you not see any benefit in apprenticeships?
I'm saying that if you have the chops to go to university and you can potentially do it, and you have what it takes to go to university, if you're bright enough or smart enough to go to university, then listening to me, particularly from a working class background wherever you're from, please go. You will learn so much, not just physically learning what you actually learn on the actual course itself. You will meet people you would never have had the opportunity to meet or so, and may not have the opportunity to meet unless you're in that actual bracket. Go. If you're somebody who feels that the apprenticeship route is better for you, also go. My argument is, don't be persuaded away from the gold standard in pursuit of actually, because all we do is that we create more privilege for the people who are already privileged. No, the privileged need to understand that, look, the old day in which it was easier for them has come and gone. We need rugged competition for this society to be as cutting edge as possible, and we need more working class people to be socially mobile upwards, taking over different things, the states suchwards, and bringing people along with them too. That's the objective, that's the dream, and that's what I advocate for.
Nels Abbey, it's always a pleasure pleasure having you on Radio London. Thank you for taking time as ever to speak to me. Great having you on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you can follow Nels Abbey on his social media, Nels Abbey. He's an author of Think Like a White Man and also broadcaster in his own right as well. Let's go to Jeremy, who's called in